My name is Whitney. My current role is fractional HR consultant or executive. A lot of people use those terms interchangeably. I've read something that said that the HR concept started like back in the 40s, and it was really just the idea of paperwork. But in the recent years, the evolution has been, hey, like HR deserves a seat at the table, which is why, the branding and the narrative has been changing over the past couple of years. My first experiences within the HR community, I was the board of directors for a nonprofit, PenSherm, which is a SHRM affiliate. And I started as the military relations chair. No secret, I'm a veteran. I was in the Army. And that's where I delved into my experiences of, okay, what is this? You find that there are different functions, different people, different approaches. It's been weird. I'm very introspective. I learn and I lead through kind of like what I feel is the best. So a lot of the feelings and a lot of things that I feel are right, I'm guided by like my moral compass, if you will. And that's really what's always led me throughout my careers. When I worked at Aerotech, which I started in staffing and recruiting, it was more so like, how do I get to know people? How do I connect with people? The lesson that kind of took me through Aerotech, Amazon, Tesla, is meeting people where they are. To go somewhere with the assumption that everybody's the same or everybody has the same motives, playing the same game, that would be a disservice to them. And that would be a disservice of me getting to know them, especially when taking along the approach that they're my customers. So a lot of it is meet people where they are and dissolve any assumptions, build relationships and gather information and see where and how I can add that value. When I left the great old company that I worked at in staffing, it was a nervous transition because I had a lot of things going on personally as well. So for me, I took a chance on myself, and that's something that I'd never done professionally up until that point. So when I was like, hey, look, y'all, I'm leaving this job, and I left as a high performer. So it wasn't as if I was like, oh, one way out the door. People were like, what's going on? But that's when I learned how to truly bet on myself. It was actually Amazon. And they were like, well, we're not going to be going into an office. I'm thinking that I'm going to work in a fulfillment center. And they were like, we're just going to ship you your equipment. Everything's going to be work from home. And I was like, and then I had like this crazy thing where because I was used to working a lot of hours, so I had to learn how to, like turn that off. I had to compartmentalize my days. I had to really take time for breakfast, and it was a crazy adjustment. But once I began to actually do it, I was more productive than I ever had been. And then it helped me really maintain a sense of work life balance. Because while I was going into the office, one of the things that I noticed is that my FaceTime didn't always mean productivity. It just meant that I'm here. So the idea of meeting people where they are, I kind of have this entrepreneurship like mindset because when I was in staffing, sales, business to business, etc., there is where I kind of got to understand different business leaders have different needs. If you're set like staffing is one thing, but then you understanding like where they are, how they make their money, like what's really important to them, understanding that why. The fractional piece is more so, especially when we're talking about smaller companies. I love taking on the consultative approach in the sense of, hey, like you don't want to use or begin to kind of step into HR when it's too late. So my favorite thing is helping, especially like executives, people who are usually very much outgoing, very much, like type A, to understand like this is how you also sustain what you're doing by going on the defense and being sure to kind of make time and space for this as you scale. The fact that it's more so embracive of something that has become divisive, if you will. My very first day at Tesla, I got an email. Mind you, I'm remote. And it was like, hey, look, y'all need to move wherever, but you're not going to have a job if you don't. But that was my first day. So you can only imagine. I'm like, yo, I just left them. Like, so I'm panicked. And one of the things that I did on my resume was I included like my reason for leaving, was, hey, couldn't relocate. By the time it didn't make sense for me to relocate. But hearing essentially about the remote employee experience, it definitely helps because you can't like help something if you don't name it, if there's no definition to it, right? Then how can you say that we're going to move the needle? Because what goes unmeasured goes unnoticed. Like it doesn't get done. For me, it's like, hey, here's a name to it. Here is an approach to it. So it was interesting to actually be a part of a collective that understands that and places that on like the forefront of everything that they do, which is really, 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 really cool. That's probably one of many of my favorite things about it. Pioneership. For me, it's always reading. You got to know when to be a student and a teacher. Like all the times we come into these spaces and it's like, okay, I know that I know what I know, but I know that I don't know everything. And I have to have the discernment to understand, okay, when can I be a resource? When do I just need to sit down and listen? The other piece is, I guess the basketball culture has changed. This is how I realize I'm getting a little old too, Rick. Because I was like, I can be Kobe or I can be LeBron. And I feel like a couple of people understood what that meant. Like you understand, like Kobe's like the Mamba, like he can get 50 up in a game, like there was a very good interview where he talked about having like that mentality and just kind of pushing yourself forward. I'm a big sports fan. And then you got like LeBron, who's like, yeah, I can give you 110%, but his MO, like if you look at the stats, especially when he was playing for Cleveland, when he brought the first championship there, everybody else's scores went up, like their percentages went up, alongside his. So it was kind of like that multiplier. It's like I can be the doer, I can be the multiplier. Just let me know when I'm in the game what you need. But really, it's more so making sure that I'm flexible and I offer a certain level of fluidity when I'm approaching these things by understanding and assessing them as I need to by understanding myself. The biggest piece is the scalability of it, right? Like when you're a smaller company, the changes are pretty consistent versus if you're like a established company. Your people, operations flow, all of that is going to change when you're 1 million in revenue, 2 million in revenue, 3 million in revenue. Oftentimes, especially as we're seeing now, it makes sense to be a bit more adaptive to not only the culture or what makes sense for your business, but what the people want. When it comes to the hybrid model, when it comes to the remote model, the remote is that's what the people want. Not only is it what the people want and what makes a lot of sense, there's studies that show that that's what makes people more productive. I myself did a study on like the silent cost of attrition, where like if someone leaves your company, especially in the like the seed state, like when you're just starting, it costs you much more like than you think. And all of that for me kind of ties back to how do you meet people where they are and really put the focus on not attendance, like we're hiring adults, but more so productivity. This is my expectation of you. People can show up in the office, doesn't mean that they're the most productive in an office, it means that they showed up. And I think when companies, especially smaller companies, have like when they begin to scale up, the focus is on, well, I need people here. And you think that that's easier to control, for lack of a better term. And that's not necessarily the case. You get a good workflow, you get a good system, you'll find and have everything that you need.